Hello, this is Terri again with part 2 of my understanding of our universe. I left off part 1 with talking about the decaf, or the decap, or the decap, however you want to pronounce it. And but I didn't leave an image of those 5 or 6 aspects, so I wanted to leave an image. So there's the dome, and the dome can be separate from the cosmology, cosmos, or they can be one and the same. Okay. And inside you get constellations, moon, sun. I don't have the sun on this picture. And you got Polaris in the middle. The little blue strip is my Polaris from this model. You have the plane. In this model, the blue plate is the plane. Silver plate soil is the continent. Originally it was one large mass continent, so I'm just showing that to represent the continents. And there is an Arctic barrier of ice wall. And the subterranean, whatever's underneath the ground, 8 miles or more. All we know about is 8 miles. So here it is all together. Dome, the atmosphere. Oh, on here, I don't have the atmosphere. So obviously, you can raise this up and there's an atmosphere. So I always forget the atmosphere. So that's why I use the grill. But anyway, so this is it all together. What it looks like. Okay, so the actual first point for part 2 is the how the plane is divided. So we know that we use 360 units for a circle, for all circuits, no matter how much area the circle has. And it's my understanding that 360 is not an arbitrary number, that was the original circuit time for the sun. So again, another video, I won't go into it in the details. So we have a plane, and the circumference is divided into 360 degrees, and also the half of the plane, or the diameter, would be 180 degrees, and half of the diameter would be 90 degrees. Therefore, and Polaris is the reference point for everything. So Polaris is the reference point for the center of the plane. And therefore, the center of the plane would be the Arctic center, would be here of the plane. And halfway between 0 degrees at the Arctic center to the 90 degree for that radius of Antarctica, that's how you would divide the plane. On the scientism, they have the Arctic center at the top and something else they imagine down at the bottom of a sphere. But actually, the Arctic center is in the center of the plane. And the end of the Earth, so to speak, would be 90 degrees away from the Arctic center. Polaris is the point of reference for everything. Okay, so now I'm going to show you underneath. Before I showed you underneath, and I still had the blue plate in place, but you still got a chance to see, just the apex of underneath the dome. So now I'm going to show you underneath the dome without the blue plate, but with my symbols of the cosmos. Okay, I think that's about right. So yeah, so that's just an example of what the cosmos would look like underneath, for a model, So we see a dome, there's no vectors or angles, you know, so we know it's round, you know, it contours the sky when you look up, you know, so there's no corner, so it's not like a plain vanishing point, you know, with corners like we see with the ceiling and floor and walls. So, so that's how we know there's curvature. And the sky rolls, and we'll go into that a little later too. But what I wanted to talk about at this point is that basically, if this is a plane and we were using 180-degree diameter, circumference 360 units, and 90 degrees for radius, and if we're using 360 miles for the apex height and 72,000 miles for the circumference, that dimension, then basically from 0 to 90 degrees is 11,464.968 miles. The diameter from here to here then would be 22,929.936 miles. And then again, the 360 units would be 72,000 miles around. So, therefore, a degree would be 127.388 miles. A half a degree would be half of that, approximately 63.6942 miles. Okay, so if that's the case, because Africa has not shifted, Polaris has not moved, the Great Pyramid is still aligned with Polaris, so we can use Africa as a reference. So basically, Tunisia is around 26 degrees, the Great Pyramid is 30 degrees, Lake George, Uganda, somewhere in the middle there, is the 45 equator mark. Jama, Ecuador was also about 45 at the equator. And then Cape Algujas of Africa is like 62 degrees. And Cape Horn of Argentina is like 73 degrees. These are latitudes, the distance from the Arctic center. And then your mainland edge of Antarctica all the way around will be about 80 degrees, more or less. And so the edge of Antarctica would be 90 degrees. So you multiply 80 degrees to 90 degrees, which is 10 degrees times 127, and you get an approximation of the area or radius of Antarctica. So that's what I understand. So so that's that. Okay, so the equator for the plane will then be 5,732.484 at that mileage. That would be the equator. Now for the dome, I'm going to use the scale down model. We're talking about Polaris, and we're talking about from Polaris down to the ice wall barrier, because I think that's where the dome would meet the ice wall barrier, somewhere around there, versus the actual plane of the Earth, or water or something. So I think the ice barrier is the nth edge. So anyway, you would have 90 degrees Polaris to 0 degrees at the meeting conjunction of the dome and the ice wall barrier. So again, 90 degrees Polaris to the 0 degrees to the ice wall barrier of the dome and the ice wall. And because of the slope and because of the ratio of 360 miles for the apex of the dome and the 11,464.968 radius, you're going to have a slope where the 45-degree mark is going to be about here for the dome. And as we said, for the plane, it'll be the halfway mark on the plane at 45 degrees. So about right here. So that would be the equator, the plane equator. The dome equator would be at the 45-degree mark if you want to do that in terms of, or you can do the halfway mark between the slope, which would be 11,470 miles. So then that would be 5,735 miles if you want to do the actual slope equator. But if you go by the 45-degree mark, that's 8,106 miles to the plane of the Earth. So that's important to know because it affects how the cosmos works, and it affects our visual effects, how we see the cosmos and the dynamics of the cosmos. So you have the celestial equator, and you have the plane equator. Okay? And you have to remember there is a slope to the dome, and the length of the slope is 11,470 point 8127, I think. And the length of the dome is 11,464.968.